a world transformed. The First World War from 1914 to 1918 dramatically reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire, which had ruled over much of the region for centuries, collapsed under the weight of its own internal contradictions and the pressure of external forces. As the Ottoman Empire crumbled, European powers, particularly Great Britain, saw an opportunity to expand their influence and secure strategic interests in the region. The British Mandate for Palestine emerged from the ashes of this tumultuous period. The concept of mandates was a novel approach to administering territories that had been part of the defeated empires. Instead of outright annexation, the victorious Allied powers agreed to govern these territories under the supervision of the newly formed League of Nations. The mandate system, while presented as a temporary measure to guide these regions towards independence, often masked the self-interested motives of the colonial powers. The decision to establish a mandate for Palestine was influenced by a complex interplay of factors. Great Britain had strategic interests in the region, particularly in securing access to the Suez Canal, a vital waterway connecting Europe to Asia. Moreover, Britain had made promises to both Arabs and Jews regarding their aspirations for self-determination in Palestine, creating a tangled web of commitments that would prove difficult to reconcile. The establishment of the British Mandate for Palestine in 1922 marked the beginning of a new chapter in the region's history, one fraught with challenges, conflicts, and ultimately a struggle for independence that continues to this day. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of the mandate system created a power vacuum in the Middle East, setting the stage for decades of political turmoil and conflict. The British Mandate for Palestine in particular would become a focal point of international attention, its legacy shaping the region's destiny for generations to come. A promise on paper. The Balfour Declaration, a seemingly innocuous letter written in 1917 by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Walter Rothschild, a prominent figure in the Zionist movement, would have profound and far-reaching consequences for the future of Palestine. In this brief document, the British government declared its support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This declaration, while expressing support for Zionist aspirations, also stipulated that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. The Balfour Declaration was a testament to the growing influence of the Zionist movement, which had been advocating for a Jewish homeland in Palestine since the late 19th century. The Zionist movement, motivated by a combination of factors including anti-Semitism in Europe and a desire to revive Jewish national identity, saw Palestine as the rightful historical and spiritual homeland for the Jewish people. The declaration, however, was riddled with ambiguities and contradictions, particularly in its vague language regarding the rights of the Arab population, which constituted the vast majority of Palestine's inhabitants. The Balfour Declaration was met with mixed reactions. While Zionists hailed it as a major victory and a significant step towards the realization of their aspirations, the Arab population in Palestine viewed it with suspicion and apprehension. The declaration, in their eyes, represented a betrayal by the British, who had promised them independence in exchange for their support during the war against the Ottomans. The vague wording of the declaration, particularly its failure to clearly define the rights of the Arab majority, sowed the seeds of future conflict. The Balfour Declaration, while seemingly a simple statement of intent, became a cornerstone of British policy in Palestine during the Mandate period. The declaration's legacy, however, remains deeply contested, with its interpretation and implications at the heart of the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For some, it represents a promise made and broken, while for others it signifies the recognition of a legitimate historical claim. Regardless of one's perspective, the Balfour Declaration remains a pivotal document in understanding the origins and complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Carving up the Middle East. The San Remo Conference of 1920, a gathering of Allied powers in the aftermath of World War I, played a pivotal role in shaping the political landscape of the Middle East, including the fate of Palestine. It was at this conference that the victorious powers, eager to divide the spoils of war and solidify their influence in the region, formally allocated the mandates for Palestine and Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq, to Great Britain. This decision, made without consulting the wishes of the local populations, would have far-reaching consequences for the region's future. The San Remo Conference formalized the mandate system, which had been conceptually outlined in the Covenant of the League of Nations. This system, designed to administer the former territories of the defeated empires, was presented as a temporary measure to guide these regions towards eventual independence. The mandate for Palestine, however, proved to be anything but temporary, lasting for almost 3 decades and leaving behind a legacy of conflict and instability. The mandate document for Palestine, drafted by the League of Nations and approved in 1922, incorporated the Balfour Declaration, thus legally obligating Great Britain to facilitate the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. This mandate, while recognizing the historical connection of the Jewish people to Palestine, also stressed the importance of safeguarding the rights of the existing non-Jewish communities. However, the mandate provided little concrete guidance on how to reconcile these competing claims, leaving ample room for interpretation and conflict. The San Remo Conference and the subsequent establishment of the British Mandate for Palestine marked a turning point in the region's history. The decisions made at San Remo, driven by a combination of strategic interests, wartime promises, and idealistic notions of international governance, set the stage for decades of conflict and instability in the Middle East. The mandate system, while presented as a benevolent form of trusteeship, ultimately failed to deliver on its promises, leaving behind a legacy of resentment and unresolved issues that continue to haunt the region to this day. Section 4, a delicate balancing act, British administration and the seeds of conflict. The British administration of Palestine, from the outset, faced the daunting task of balancing the competing aspirations of the Jewish and Arab populations. The Mandate authorities, tasked with facilitating the establishment of a Jewish national home, while simultaneously safeguarding the rights of the existing Arab majority, found themselves caught in a seemingly intractable dilemma. This balancing act, fraught with challenges and contradictions, ultimately proved unsustainable, contributing to the escalation of violence and the eventual partition of Palestine. The British administration, often accused of inconsistency and double standards, struggled to implement a coherent policy in Palestine. The Mandate authorities, torn between their commitments to the Zionist movement and their desire to maintain order and stability in the region, often resorted to ad hoc measures that satisfied neither side. The Jewish population, encouraged by the Balfour Declaration and supported by Jewish immigration and land purchases, sought to establish a strong presence in Palestine, while the Arab population, increasingly marginalized and apprehensive of their future, resisted these efforts. The British, facing growing pressure from both sides, implemented a series of policies that further exacerbated tensions. Restrictions on Jewish immigration, attempts to limit land purchases by Jews, and the creation of separate administrative and legal structures for Jews and Arabs all contributed to a climate of mistrust and resentment. The British, despite their efforts to maintain a semblance of order, inadvertently fueled the flames of conflict by failing to address the underlying political aspirations of both communities. The British administration in Palestine, despite its efforts to maintain a semblance of neutrality, found itself increasingly embroiled in the complex and often violent dynamics of the region. The Mandate period witnessed a series of clashes between Arabs and Jews, fueled by competing claims to land, resources, and political power. The British, unable to reconcile these fundamental differences, resorted to a policy of containment and control which ultimately proved unsustainable in the face of growing nationalist sentiment and resistance to colonial rule. The seeds of conflict, sown during the Mandate period, would ultimately bear bitter fruit in the years to come, shaping the tragic trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Section 5. Years of unrest, the Arab revolt and the deepening divide. The 1930s witnessed a significant escalation of violence in Palestine, culminating in the Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939, a watershed moment in the history of the Mandate period. The revolt, fueled by growing Arab frustration with British policies perceived as favoring Zionist aspirations, exposed the deep fissures within Palestinian society and the inherent instability of the Mandate system. This period of unrest marked a turning point, pushing the British administration towards a policy of partition as the only viable solution to the seemingly intractable conflict. The Arab Revolt was triggered by a confluence of factors including increased Jewish immigration to Palestine, land purchases by Zionist organizations, and the perceived lack of progress towards Arab self-rule. The revolt, characterized by armed uprisings, strikes, and acts of sabotage, targeted both British authorities and Jewish communities. The British, initially caught off guard by the scale and intensity of the violence, responded with force, deploying troops and imposing martial law. The Arab Revolt had a profound impact on Palestinian society, further deepening the divide between the Arab and Jewish communities. The revolt, while ultimately suppressed by the British, left an enduring legacy of bitterness and mistrust. It also shattered any remaining illusions of Arab-Jewish coexistence, paving the way for the emergence of more radical and uncompromising forms of nationalism on both sides. The Arab Revolt marked a turning point in the British mandate for Palestine, exposing the inherent flaws of the mandate system and the unsustainability of British rule in the face of growing nationalist aspirations. The revolt, while brutally suppressed, forced the British to confront the realities of the situation and to consider alternative solutions to the Palestinian question. The Peel Commission, appointed in 1936 to investigate the causes of the unrest, would recommend the partition of Palestine into separate Arab and Jewish states, a proposal that would have far-reaching consequences for the future of the region.